He would jail her, and accusing her husband of being the worst abuser of women in the history of politics. Our US correspondent Robert Moore was watching.
The opening seconds gave us a clue to the ugliness that was to come. A smile and a greeting just about. But for the first time ever in a presidential debate, not even a suggestion of a handshake. Donald Trump immediately was asked about his boasting of sexual advances, even assaults, which threatens to destroy his candidacy.
And yes, I'm very embarrassed by it. I hate it, but it's locker room talk, and it's one of those things.
He has said that the video doesn't represent who he is, but I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is.
But then Trump took this campaign and this debate into uncharted territory. With a number of women sitting in the audience, guests of Trump, who accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault, the Republican launched his scorched earth policy.
There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. What President Clinton did, he was impeached, he lost his license to practice law, he had to pay an $850,000 fine to one of the women, Paula Jones, who's also here tonight.
At times, Mrs. Clinton looked taken aback at Trump's aggressive and high-risk attacks. But it may have played well with his core of angry supporters.
You delete 33,000 emails, and then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it. It's a disgrace, and honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
And if you think that only in dictatorships and failing states that there is talk of throwing your opponent in prison, well, listen to this.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Mrs. Clinton accused Russia of hacking into politically sensitive websites, suggesting Trump would be the beneficiary.
We have never in the history of our country been in a situation where an adversary, a foreign power, is working so hard to influence the outcome of the election. And believe me, they're not doing it to get me elected. They're doing it to try to influence the election for Donald Trump.
But after 90 minutes of brutal attack and counterattack, a final surprise, praise for each other.
Would either of you name one positive thing that you respect in one another?
I respect his children. His children are incredibly able and devoted, and I think that says a lot about Donald.
I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit, she doesn't give up. I respect that.
Afterwards, in the spin room next door, both sides recognized this debate had taken presidential politics into a depressing place.
We've never been this low before. It's it's unnecessary, it's unkind, and it is a supreme diversion. Why are you asking about it? Because it's a diversion.
Does it in any way sadden you that American politics is now at this level?
Of course, it should sadden anybody that we're at this level. But it doesn't mean that we can't get better again.
The candidates did manage a brief handshake at the end, Trump remaining severely damaged by that leaked tape. But it appears he has survived to fight on for the final 30 days.
But as you say, American politics has seen nothing like this.
Yeah, really an extraordinary night. I'm not sure we thought that American politics would ever go quite this low. Perhaps we should have guessed it, though, because it all began with a very bizarre Facebook Live. This was even before the debate began, in which Donald Trump invited before the world 4 women, 3 of whom accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault. That sort of refers back to his days as a politician in Arkansas. Now, Bill Clinton denies all of those charges, but this was clearly some kind of psychological warfare by Donald Trump, trying to get Hillary Clinton off her A game, so much so that he actually put those women in the audience.
I tweeted recently, and Mr. Trump retweeted it, that actions speak louder than words. Mr. Trump may have said some bad words, but Bill Clinton raped me and Hillary Clinton threatened me. I don't think there's any comparison.
Robert, back to the debate then. And which candidate do you think will be most pleased with their performance?
Well, I think actually you can argue that both ways. Focus groups suggest it could have gone either way. I think there's a persuasive argument actually both candidates won. Donald Trump won because he survived the night, and before the debate began, people were actually doubting whether his candidacy was still viable. Hillary Clinton won precisely because Donald Trump stays intact. It's kind of her optimum outcome, if you like, that Donald Trump stays in the race for the next 30 days, alive, surviving, but clearly, politically, badly wounded.
Robert Moore, thank you. Here, a 15-year-old boy has admitted to murdering a mother and her teenage daughter. Elizabeth Edwards and her 13-year-old daughter, Katie, were found dead at their Lincolnshire home in April. The boy is appearing in court alongside a girl of the same age who denies the charges. Damon Green is at Nottingham Crown Court this lunchtime. Damon, what exactly happened in court?
We heard about the police making the discovery April the 15th this year. They broke through the living room window of that residential address in Spalding in Lincolnshire, and upstairs in the bedrooms of 5 Dawson Avenue they made a terrible discovery. The bodies of Elizabeth Edwards, age 49, and her daughter Katie. They'd been stabbed to death in their beds. Today, as you say, a 15-year-old boy pleaded guilty to their murder. He spoke only to say that he was guilty of their murders, and he was 14 years old at the time. He's now 15. Then the trial began of a 15-year-old girl who was also 14 at the time. She nor the boy can be named for legal reasons. Peter Joyce, QC for the prosecution, outlined the case against her. He told the 5 women and 7 men on the jury they would not be shown any distressing images of the victims. And he did show them a large kitchen knife he said had been used to carry out the attacks. The jury heard that the defendant before them has pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of Elizabeth and Katie Edwards, but pleaded not guilty to their murder on the grounds of her mental state. The prosecution, though, say that these were cold, calculated and callous killings. She's shown not a hint of remorse. Witnesses will give their evidence this afternoon.
Damon Green, thank you. Bullies who target people online could soon find themselves in jail. The Crown Prosecution Service is publishing new guidelines today against hate crimes on social media and so-called internet trolls. It's hoped the guidance will help police decide whether or not to press charges. Olivia Kinsley has the details.
The doctored images trolls post of Nicola Brooks online are disturbing and bizarre.
They target me for my appearance. You know, they don't like the way I look, they don't like anything.
They change her photos and make graphic videos. She says they've even falsely accused her of being a drug dealer and a paedophile.
They try to silence you, they intimidate you, threaten you, and then they start posting things to your home, and they start stalking you online elsewhere. You're just like in this fishbowl, and you can't get out of it.
Rare prosecutions give online bullies little incentive to stop, but now new rules should better guide victims and the police on when abusers should face criminal charges. They include offences like virtual mobbing, when trolls encourage others to get involved in online harassment. Also doxing, making personal information available, like a home address or bank details, and baiting, humiliating a person or posting photoshopped images on social media.
Obviously, Twitter and Facebook and other social media can be a force for good, but they can also be abused. And what the CPS is saying is we can use existing laws to deal with you, and we're putting you on notice that if you're going to behave like this, we'll come after you.
Nicola welcomes the guidelines but says they'll need constant updating.
They're going to find new ways of getting around the security systems, getting around the laws.
Her abuse still continues 5 years after it began. She hopes that's something future victims won't have to endure. Olivia Kinsley, ITV News.
A man has appeared in court in Germany accused of planning a major bomb attack. Jabbar al-Bakr arrived in the country after saying he'd fled the war in Syria. He was arrested following a 2-day manhunt. Police said they found several hundred grams of an explosive in his apartment. And the death toll in Haiti following Hurricane Matthew has reached 1,000. There have been outbreaks of cholera in the southwest of the country, which was devastated by severe flooding. In the last hour, the government has ruled out giving MPs a vote on Brexit, saying to second-guess the British people would be unacceptable. It comes after the former Labour leader Ed Miliband had joined forces with some key Tory and Lib Dem politicians to try to persuade the Prime Minister to hold a vote in Parliament, specifically on leaving the European single market. Our political correspondent Paul Brand is in Westminster. Paul, is this the end of it then? No vote in the Commons on this major decision?
No, Nina, definitely no vote on this particular decision, and MPs complaining this lunchtime that leaving the EU is supposed to be about taking back control for the British Parliament. So where is their control now to decide the terms of Brexit? Ed Miliband, as you say, has teamed up with MPs from several different parties, including, for example, the former Lib Dem leader, Nick Clegg, who I've spoken to this morning, as well as several Conservative MPs like Stephen Phillips, who's written this letter to the Speaker demanding a debate on the terms of Brexit. Downing Street, though, say there will be a debate, there will be scrutiny, there just won't be a vote, because they say that would be MPs second-guessing the wishes of the British people. Ed Miliband, though, says it is Theresa May who has no mandate here. She has a mandate to leave the EU, but she doesn't have a mandate on the terms of Brexit, particularly leaving the single market, which is what he is concerned about.
I accept the result. We're going to leave the European Union. But the question is, what terms are we leaving the European Union on? And I don't think anyone can pretend that the referendum defined those terms. And that's why Parliament must have a role.
But it's not just MPs putting the pressure on the government at the moment. Businesses too are expressing increasing concerns about what's looking like a hard Brexit, as it's called, leaving the single market. There will be an opportunity this afternoon to ask questions of the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, when he stands up in here. But MPs can ask, they just won't be able to vote.
Paul Brand, thank you. Still to come, Royal Mail criticised over delivering thousands of letters from fraudsters to vulnerable victims. And marking World Mental Health Day, why the campaigning Royal Trio are launching a marathon effort to tackle stigma.
Mental health is not a dirty word. We all have mental health, like we do physical health, good or ill.
Before that, the widow of a leading academic who was stabbed to death in a random attack outside their home has told ITV News she wants answers as to why his killer had been allowed to roam the streets. Within the last few minutes, the attacker was sentenced to be held in a secure hospital indefinitely after being convicted of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Sejal Karia is outside the Old Bailey. Remind us what happened that day, Sejal.
Well, Dr. Jeroen Ensik was killed just 11 days after becoming a father for the first time. He'd stepped out of his London flat to post cards to friends and family announcing the birth of his new baby daughter when he was repeatedly stabbed. His attacker was Femi Nandap, a 23-year-old Nigerian man with severe mental health issues. The court heard how he believed he was the Black Messiah and that voices in his head had told him to sacrifice a white man. The court also heard that just 6 days earlier, charges against him were dropped by the police for carrying 2 knives and for assaulting a police officer, and that he was free to kill.
Sejal, what exactly has his widow had to say about the killing, about the case?
Well, Nadia Ensik-Taik gave a statement to court with her baby daughter cradled in the arms of a relative sitting close by to her, at times breaking down. She said that her husband was her soulmate and that his loss had left an incredible void in their lives. But she had also spoken to ITV News, where she is demanding answers as to why Nandap was free to kill.
My big question from the very beginning is, how could this have ever happened? I still can't get my head around it. If someone who's so mentally unfit, how could they be allowed to be at liberty to walk around with knives.
Well, the police say they have reviewed their procedures and lessons will be learnt from this case. And today, Nandap has been detained indefinitely at Broadmoor Secure Hospital.
Sejal Karia, thank you. Royal Mail has been accused of allowing thousands of fraudulent letters to be sent to vulnerable recipients. The Daily Mail newspaper found the letters are sent with Royal Mail branding to a target list of elderly victims, some of whom have lost tens of thousands of pounds. Nick Wallace has the details.
Sticker here if you've been specially selected to receive one, and I've been selected to receive it.
A vulnerable woman targeted through her mail by criminals. Jessica Look died in 2007 at the age of 83 after receiving 30,000 scam letters, which eventually cheated her out of £50,000. Jessica's daughter says this has to stop.
If it carries the Royal Mail stamp, it actually does look like it's originated from the UK. It's deception, and you cannot trace the senders of this mail, and once you've sent your money off, once they've got you in their clutches, literally, they will destroy the lives. They've already done it to my mother, but they're doing it to thousands and thousands of people now.
Scam letters are sent by criminals, usually based abroad, to companies who use the Royal Mail delivery service and envelopes which carry Royal Mail branding. At the moment, it's illegal for any intermediary to open another person's mail, which makes it difficult to spot a scam without hard evidence that something bogus is going on. The former pensions minister says that's not good enough.
It shouldn't be too difficult for Royal Mail to at least introduce random checks and see for themselves what kind of material they're sending out.
Royal Mail has told ITN it doesn't knowingly distribute mail from fraudsters, and it has terminated contracts where companies have been proven to be operating scam mail. It's too late for Jessica Look, but campaigners say thousands of vulnerable people continue to be scammed, and the Royal Mail could be doing more. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
Southern Railway is taking legal action to stop a series of strikes starting tomorrow. The rail union, the RMT, had planned a 3-day walkout from Tuesday, but Southern could ask the courts to declare it illegal. It's the latest in the long-running dispute over planned changes to the role of conductors. Finally, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, along with Prince Harry, are helping to mark World Mental Health Day. The trio are spending the day talking to people with psychological problems and hearing about the help they've received. It's part of a campaign to change the way we all talk about mental health and try to stop the stigma that still surrounds it. Sally Biddulph reports.
Heads Together is the campaign they chose to champion together. And today, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry were focused once again on mental health.
Mental health is not a dirty word. We all have mental health, like we do physical health, good or ill. But not seeking help at those times when it all seems too much, or we are depressed or anxious, can impact the rest of our lives. Put simply, the three of us want to make asking for help no longer a big deal.
William, Harry and I feel it is our duty to do what we can to help, with your help, to shine a spotlight on emotional well-being and to highlight the support that is out there to prevent or manage the pain in these difficult times.
Mental illness does not discriminate. It affects 1 in 4 of us and can take many forms. Richard McGee sought help with support from his mum after struggling with anxiety and depression.
As a firefighter, I think some things that happened in that job didn't help. Also, a relationship breakup was a big factor as well. And I think with the two mixed together, just kind of exploded really and didn't go to plan.
One of the most pressing issues is tackling youth mental illness. 75% of all mental health problems begin before the age of 18. Yet only a quarter of young people referred to services are getting the appropriate mental health care. One reason given by charities is funding for research. Only £8 is spent on research per person affected, 22 times less than is spent on cancer.
We've seen cancer survival rates absolutely transformed in the last 30 years. HIV is no longer the death sentence that it used to be, and now it's time to do the same for mental health and make research work to actually improve treatments for mental illness.
Another huge issue is stigma.
Fruitcake.
Crazy.
Weirdo.
The I Am Whole campaign brings together celebrities with the sole aim of breaking down the taboo of mental health in children. With 3 kids in every classroom affected by things like anxiety, depression and eating disorders, the need is very real. But before you can tackle mental health at any age, you have to talk about it. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
And that is all we've got time for so far today. Mark Austin and Charlene White will be here with the ITV Evening News. From everyone here for now, bye-bye.